Hi, this is Tim of the 1916 Company. Welcome and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email us, Team Mosso at the1916company.com for purchase, pricing, and availability questions concerning this watch. And you will want to concern yourself with this watch because it's an all-time great. In platinum, at 40.2 millimeters in diameter, this is the Patek Philippe 5316P. Now, it's the 001. It's the model that was made from the debut of the 5316 in 2017 until its phase-out for the transparent sapphire dial model in 2023. So a short window with no more than perhaps 6 to 12 made per year. This is an extraordinarily rare watch. It is the heir to the late, great 90s through 2000s, 5016. Mechanically, the two are identical. This is just a larger case size at 40.2 millimeters in diameter. So 40.2 in diameter, 13.3 millimeters thick from lug tip to lug tip, a wonderfully compact 47.6 with a 20 millimeter spacing in between the lugs. Now, of course, Patek Philippe Tourbillon watches have their serial number on the dial side as well as the back, which is why I have masked this. We're going to throw it on my wrist, which is 16 centimeters in circumference. And you can see that it wears beautifully. Comfortable, compact, a watch that is shapely and nicely sized. You can see in every regard. Easy to wear on a 16 centimeter circumference wrist. And in fact, I could even recommend this for a wrist as small as 14 centimeters in circumference, as there's really no compromise whatsoever. All the complexity of this watch is compact. Remember, the original model, the 5016, which used the same movement, that was a 36.2 millimeter watch. So this movement and this watch are quite compact, svelte, just not petite. The original, to modern tastes, looks a little bit undersized, whereas this is just about ideal. Now, full clasp, made of platinum, you can see. It's a standard piece for Patek Philippe. Features a little radial spring that closes everything and keeps it snap shut with a little extra degree of mechanical friction and adhesion so it won't pop open. Taking a look, you have the Calatrava cross. This is the symbol of the company. You can see it also on the crown. Now, taking a look at the watch, you can see that the timepiece has a beautiful platinum carapace. Taking a closer look, you can see how far Patek Philippe case making has come since it purchased Geneva casemaker Atelier Réuni back in 1975. These lugs are beautifully welded on and hand finished to create the break between the edge of the lug and the edge of the case. The idea being with welded lugs, you build the case and the lug separate. You insert the lug into a flank of the case into a slot, then you weld them together and use a file to create this just super sharp, razor-like break between case and lug. You can see there's a little bit of a fluting on the edge of the lug. That the bezel features a little bit of a circumferential gadroon and a domed profile. Of course, this is a modern-day platinum Patek Philippe, which means there is a top Vesselton diamond between the lugs. The cases are no longer made by Jean-Pierre Hagman. They're now made in-house by Patek, but his famous and innovative repeater slide track, which pretty much guides the repeater slide through its motion, that has been retained. On the dial, the most obvious change from the 5016 is the fact that this is now a Grand Faux enamel dial. Now, on most, not all, but most of the 5016s made, if you got a dark color, you got lacquer, whereas if you got white, you got enamel. It was very difficult to create dark enamel to the point that even if you bought a minute-repeating perpetual calendar tourbillon, the 5016, you were still going to get a lacquered dial if it was dark, just because the difficulty of creating a flawless, smooth, black enamel. Well, Patek has gotten past that, and we now have the ability to create a Grand Faux enamel dial in black that is as smooth and silky as lacquer. So it doesn't have an orange peel effect. It doesn't have any kind of cratering or flaws or runs or creases. There's nothing to betray the fact that this is actually fired glass, vitreous enamel. Now, taking a quick look, you can also see that the dial includes little white gold cabochon, faceted indices, and hands. So all those features are white gold, along with the frames for the date. You can see that the dial itself is actually a sort of champlevé. So it's scooped out, and then the frame of the calendars, so you could see the the day, the leap year phase, and the month, that's actually part of the dial base, which is made of white gold. And so the dial is scooped out, and then the enamel, the glass-based paint, is filled around the border of the date as well as the apertures, brought flush with that white gold so it doesn't appear to be raised in relief above the dial. And then all that is fired together to create this glassy sheen with white gold outlines and highlights. It's a very difficult thing to do. And so this is not just Grand Faux enamel, this is also Champlavé. Now we have a retrograde style date. You can see it down the center. This is very true to the 5016. So you have your aperture style day, leap year phase, and month. Then you have a retrograde date. Then you have a moon phase that is coaxial with the seconds hand. Now this is a perpetual calendar, so it does not need to be touched until the year 2100. It can deal with irregular length months. It can deal with leap years. So we also have a moon phase, and this is a little bit different. It has a longer duration. It is 122 years in between settings. Now, of course, this is a dial side seconds based on a caseback tourbillon. So I'm going to demonstrate how this works real quick. We're going to fire this up so you can see it in action. Now, traditionally, until the last decade, just about every Patek Philippe tourbillon has been a caseback tourbillon. And you could see that was very much the case when this movement was created for the 5016 in the 1990s. Now, of course, the watch is mechanically identical to a 5016 or a 5216. The 53 just brings back the case shape of the 5016, whereas the 5216 was a bit of an odd watch because despite the expense and rarity, it looked exactly like a 5496. So reverting to the prior case shape was kind of instrumental to restoring this model line's identity. And you could see the identity on the reverse side is unmistakable. So you're looking at the caliber RTO 27PSQR, all of which means this is a repeater, a tourbillon. It's a small second display. It is a perpetual calendar with retrograde, and 27 is the diameter of the base of the caliber. It's a little bit bigger when you add the topside pieces. So manual wind, 48-hour power reserve, and it beats away at 3 hertz or 21,600 vibrations per hour. Minute repeater, perpetual calendar with retrograde, moon phase tourbillon. The tourbillon is equipped with a Breguet style hand-formed ferrous overcoil, not one of Patek's silicone hairsprings, those generally aren't used on the higher end watches. It is a free-sprung Gyromax style balance with the adjustments and the timing primarily regulated by moving the eccentric masses on the rim. And then the caliber is a masterpiece of complexity, as it includes 506 pieces and 28 pivot jewels. Now, it's adjusted in 6 positions and to temperature, so 1 more than the chronometer standard of 5. And at Patek Philippe tourbillon calibers, when this was made, they were rated to no worse than -1 + 2 seconds per 24 hours. So they are bold. They put a number on it, and they actually make an accuracy attestation. Now, before we get too much further, let's just hear it, because this is a particularly high-quality repeater. And we're going to do our best to set this to 12:59 now without moving to 1 o'clock by accident. Now, to be sure, the volume on this is excellent. There are louder repeaters, though not by much. Very few, however, have the lyrical quality of a Patek Philippe minute repeater. And it's said that Terry Stern still listens to each repeating watch before it leaves the manufacturer. So this has passed through his hands and received his seal of approval. Now, a couple of highlights include finishing details. First, let me just be clear. If you own this watch, don't put it in the water. Don't get it wet. It's got 0 ATM water resistance. Part of that is the need to conduct the sound from the inside to the outside. So moisture in the atmosphere and dust proof only. It will not be water resistant in any regard beyond that. Now, in terms of finish, let's take a look at the most obvious and most extravagant elements. Taking a look at the repeater strikers, you can see they're both steel. little hammers there. So they're steel, they're mirror polished across their top, which is extraordinarily difficult to do on a broad, flat plane. And then they're beveled on their edge to the point that the bevels actually come to peaks at the edge, those pointed convergence marks where two bevels draw together in a sharp tip. That is incredibly difficult to achieve. And you can also see we have circular Côte de Genève across the bridges. We have beveling that is quite broad, hand-finished, and deeply impressive. Take a look at this third wheel right here. This takes between 9 and 11 hours to finish, around 10 being the average. It is 14 karat gold, which is to say mechanical grade gold, and it is the third wheel of the movement in the train sequentially. And it is 14 karat because 14 is just a little bit harder and better to use if you want to make a mechanical part that has to bear a load and undergo mechanical duress, which this does, driving the tourbillon. So it is mechanical grade 14 karat gold and intricately finished with those interior bevels and the mirror finishing across its top, as fine as anything you'll encounter in the industry. Often described as the octopus wheel. I think those of us who count understand why that's a bit of a misnomer, but I can definitely see why people make the association. Now we have a full bridge, almost in a batwing fashion for the tourbillon. Note that both the tourbillon carriage and the bridge are made of steel and mirror finished on their tops. The bridge is further skeletonized, and then it has sharp interior creased bevels. Now it's difficult to create an interior crease. You can see there's one on the bridge for the third wheel. Hard to do on an external component, which is to say there is no confine there. Whereas on the skeletonized confines of this tiny steel bridge, it's very difficult to get in there and create those sharp and evenly sized bevels. To do these in a way that leaves you with 8 bevels of different depth and width, it would be very easy to do. To make all 8 of them comparably deep and sharp is very, very hard to do. And then you can see there's beveling on the outside as well. All screw heads are polished with chamfered slots in circumference. You can see there is engine turning on the base plate. We also have a little bit of satination on the repeater governor. You can see the repeater governor mass is underneath a golden Calatrava cross, again the symbol of the manufacturer. And if you look carefully, you can see that the gongs are also polished. So this is the Patek Philippe of your dreams, the one that leaves nothing on the table, that delivers everything and then some. So between platinum, enamel, perpetual calendar, retrograde, moonphase, tourbillon, and minute repeater, this is a watch that gives you everything you want for a price, to be sure. But this is a generational watch, the one you truly do want to keep in the family. There may be cars, there may be houses that come and go, but you want to know that your progeny and theirs, in turn, will keep this one on the wrist. I hope its next owner will be a long-term owner. Reach out to Team Mosso at the 1916company.com for purchase, pricing, and availability details.